And we are. All right. I think it is just. Yeah, I think we are live on YouTube right now, and just waiting for our guest to join us. There he is. So Bob, it's you. It's you and me, and we continue. And Mr. Tom Morris is here. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Joseph. What a magnificent show today. Really spectacular. I did 2 pages of notes. We like to show our notes. I did 2 pages of notes.
Here are mine.
Well, my neurons are just exploding and swimming now. This is amazing. Thank you, Bob. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
What connected with you? I mean, there was so many amazing thoughts, right?
I mean, I was reflecting that too many people are sleepwalking through the pandemic, hoping to get back to normal as quickly as we can. We should be thinking of this as a great reset, not as a great boomerang where things are gonna just come back to exactly the way they are. And what you had to say about this, Bob, is just it got me thinking about, in America now, a group known as the Business Roundtable, some of the top CEOs have been recently talking about redefining capitalism and redefining business. That Adam Smith, when he wrote the famous book on the Wealth of Nations in the 18th century, a lot of people don't know he wrote a book a few years before that on virtue, on the human virtues or moral goodness, and that his model of capitalism presupposes moral virtue, in which we seek not to serve ourselves first and foremost, but to serve other people. And this pandemic, Bob said some things today that just got me thinking about ways we can use this pandemic time to try to help reorient people. So it's not just rhetoric coming from the Business Roundtable, but realities of changing the way we do things. So you just got me thinking in so many ways. And of course, Joseph, you ask all the right questions. You say all the right things to prompt your guests. I mean, Bob, doesn't he make it easy to be a guest?
Oh, absolutely easy,
He's stop laughing at me.
He's a philosopher. That's the thing. Joseph is the universal philosopher. He can philosophize about anything that comes up. And some of the nicest people I've met from Brazil, some CEOs I met in Hawaii once, in Maui. There were a bunch of CEOs, corporate presidents from Brazil in the Young Presidents Organization. Right. They gave me the green Brazil soccer football caps with the globe and the thing. And they were so philosophical about life and about business, just wonderful people. 2 of my books have been published in Brazil, and I've gotten to know Brazilians in the magazine Voce SA, some other places.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm very impressed with your.
But I'll tell you something, Tom. It's very interesting because I think the CEO of Pfizer is Brazilian, and a lot of the leadership right now, all of the leadership within AB InBev are Brazilian. They're pretty tough business people, pretty hard, and they're kind of like taking over the world at the moment. But there's also a ruthless. Yeah. It's funny. You've got these two groups, I would say. You've got the very kind, caring, empathetic, group, which is led by Bob, and then you've got this ruthless Brazilian too, and they are and they're taken they're taken over at the top, at the corporate. Bob, I don't know what you can or can't say or respond or won't respond, but that's what I've noticed, that it's incredible to see. I mean, per capita, I don't think there's a country that is more represented at the most senior levels in the corporate landscape than Brazilians. And I think that's probably a safe bet.
I don't know about that, but I think we have been living so long into crisis that I think that is creating a breed of leaders that are, they face adaptability easily. They're used to, tough times.
Interesting.
And right, and they're always into different crazy crises. You know, you guys in the U.S. are experiencing that a little bit now from the government, but we've been this way forever in Brazil.
Bob, how old were you in the late 60s? I remember meeting a girl from Brazil in the late 1960s whose dad was president of a company in Brazil, and they were having great difficulties with the government at the time. Some of the leaders in the corporate world, the business world, were very much at odds with folks in the government. It was a military time or something was going on.
Yeah. I was born in 62. So
okay, so you were very young then.
Yeah, very young, but it was the military until the 80s, late 70s, so Brazil is still very closed country, right? So economy and a very government-oriented economy, right? So lobby is illegal, right? You can't do it, but it happens a lot, So so it doesn't officially exist, You can't open a company and say I do lobby. You're gonna go to jail, right? So But there are tons of people that do that, right? So
interesting.
I'm going to make a bit of a controversial point, which goes against what I actually believe. But I'm going to use Brazil as an example of an interesting use case. And I'm talking from an advertising standpoint, obviously, the world that I come from. Remember, Bob, when São Paulo, when the municipality outlawed out-of-home advertising, just said no more outdoor advertising, or the fact that it is illegal to advertise to children in Brazil. So, the obviously the autocratic, the dictatorial leadership, the parochial, the top-down leadership, when it is decisive and may very well be unpopular, I think there are some exceptions to the norm, but maybe there are none. Maybe it's like whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing, who gives a municipality or government the right to say no more out of billboard advertising, which devastates an entire industry. So that it's interesting. The example, Bob, that you used today, the word obviously is an adhocracy, which is the opposite of a bureaucracy. But I wonder if it isn't where the autocracy fits into all of that, how that all fits together. Because it's almost like the bureaucratic organization is almost inept, incompetent, passive, whereas maybe the autocratic or the dictatorial one is a lot more, offensive and offensive. Just throwing some thoughts your way to get.
It's interesting what you're saying. The story of the out of home, the cancellation, all the billboards in São Paulo. I might have told you that when we met in São Paulo, but it was an interesting point that most of the billboards were illegal, meaning they didn't pay the correct registration to be there. So that's why the government decided to cancel, because it was not getting the right taxes on it. And that's why they were able to cancel, and people could not complain because these were illegal things. They just put the billboard in front of the house and didn't pay any registration and the taxes, they should. Most of it, right? So a very few companies, they got really angry because they were the only ones that were doing all legally, right? But the majority of it was not. But in Brazil, there's something interesting, that the culture is around creating laws for everything and then not following the law. When something is wrong, we think first, let's create a new law for that, right? And then the second thinking is that let's not follow that law. There's an expression
it's interesting. Carry on.
Just there's an expression that I will try to translate, but there are laws that in Portuguese it's like they it's not work, but they get real. and there are laws that don't get real.
Yeah. So they're not enforced. They're not enforced at all. And so that cultivates contempt for all law.
Yeah, exactly.
Often in human history, when there are too many laws, too few ever get enforced or become real. And people develop a contempt for law. A casualness, but who cares? There's a new law. Who cares? Because they don't get enforced,
Right. That probably explains a little bit the moment of COVID also,
Yeah.
Well, except here, we can't seem to even follow one simple, it's not a law, obviously, but just wear a mask.
The coolest, I wish I had one. If they had masks like Bob's, everybody would wear a mask. That's the coolest mask I've ever seen. Yeah, that's awesome. Like Tony the Tiger. There you go.
Well, to me, Tom, we'll do a little bit of a marketing masterclass for you here, which is Bob. No, which is Bob. I'm just saying, I'm just the moderator. But all seriousness, and this, and I'm sure Joey can chime in as well. You see how I just brought Joey into it, but I cannot understand why we haven't seen an explosion of creativity with respect to mask production and wearing, where the brands could do such fantastic stuff, hilarious stuff that's filled with hope and, and whatever the case may be, kind of fake macaroni and cheese, mustaches, and just all the stuff that could have been done that wasn't necessarily in fact, it wouldn't have been self-serving, and the ultimate one actually would have been MAGA, would have been bright red.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have produced millions of these masks and actually said, we are going to just every day of our lives flaunt these free. This is what I call an owned asset. This is free advertising, and we just haven't. It's just incredible how this could have actually been, capitalized on, but to your point, Tom, but not in a capitalistic sort of way.
Yeah. You see, it's back to what Bob was talking about earlier, the communitarian thinking that we need. If we had created masks that were fun and funny and cool and tribal and all kinds of things, then people would have been wanting to wear masks even when they didn't have to, right? And not going the individualistic way we are now. So it would have supported the communitarian needs and the communitarian values we need to be living right now, rather than this maverick in the jungle mentality that everybody seems to have.
My dog, my Morkie, likes to play with me, and so he'll run into my closet and pick up a shoe and then dash across the bedroom and run like his life depends on it. And I'll chase him, and it'll be like, not cat and mouse, but dog and owner. And the minute that I just lose interest in him and I turn my back, he drops the shoe. And I don't have to tell the philosopher, this, but I mean, it is unbelievable how we've tried to stick as opposed to carrot this behavior change.
I think there's laws in place around PPE.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you cannot capitalize on these. I don't know exactly how they work, but my wife, her agency had a client that was trying to make them, and they put them on Facebook, and Facebook bans any sale of PPE as a consumer brand. Yeah. So I don't know,
because the moral compass in our lives is what Facebook tells us, right?
Well, if Facebook's telling you can't do something, then it's a law, right? Somewhere, not
then we do it. No, but again, like, how easily could that have been fixed by just saying all proceeds go to this charity or go to a fund, or
if it was
putting quality, or just quality control and standards, right? Which is with defense production, right? Everything has to be manufactured using these standards. So it has to be, there has to be a certain bar in terms of safety. And look, we've got bigger problems than that. That's easily solvable. But it's just
there's so much uncertainty around a mask. I faced that real case. Some people at CINT had the idea to produce a mask with our logo. And I was the one that said, there's so much uncertainty around it. I don't know what people will read when they see our logo in the mask. Some will read, virus. Some will read, illness. Some will not read health. Right. So
the associations, right?
Right. So and some of them will read, oh, they're taking advantage of our illness.
Yeah.
Right. So it was tough. And I was the one that I said, you know what, we don't do, we're not a consumer company, we're B2B, right? So we might get so much bigger of an attention that doesn't help us. We want to do business with other companies, not with end users, right? So that would be a strategy that could come out and get to the Facebooks and Instagrams of life, and people say, hey, they're getting advantage of the world pandemic, right? So, and then I was like, ooh, and even the person that had the idea, she was like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that. So yeah, so I faced that reality, and it's maybe I was a coward, Joe, maybe not innovative, no, but at the same time, my mind was around empathy, and I was saying, okay, I want to take an advantage of our logo, but am I empathizing with all the people that are suffering in the world and putting the logo there? And I don't know what's Joey Dumont. Maybe it's even forbidden. We haven't checked it. We decided not to do. We decided not to do it before we checked, but
I think that was wise. I just because I looked at it briefly with them from my wife's lens and how they're managing their client, and they actually said to the client, we won't do this. We don't want to be involved in that.
But I have seen, I've also seen, for example, when I was at the Nike factory store up in Maine, all the employees were wearing Nike face masks, and they had little swoosh. They were, black with a little white swoosh. And I don't know that they were being sold or even given away, but I think there is something to be said that a company would actually take a proactive stance in terms of saying, we will supply all of this for our employees. So I didn't get I guess I didn't look at it in an opportunistic way, which is free advertising. For them, I was like, that's kind of cool.
Also, Nike is a company whose products are made to be used outdoors and in the public and out and about, not in your home, the privacy of your home. So it's almost like the subtext there was, when you use our products, be careful. Yeah. When you wear our running shoes, have a mask available in case you need it. That kind of. Whereas Bob's work,
it's a B2B thing.
It's very different, right? Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense to me that Nike would do that.
It would be very opportunistic for us, not for everyone, but for us to produce that, right?
So Bob, you're not a coward, I can tell you with great confidence, because a coward is a person who lets fear keep him from doing something that's necessary. Right. That's called for, that's morally required. But this wasn't in the line of your business at all. As a B2B business, it wasn't in the line of your business. So you're safe. You're a cautious person.
It's the old line, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in this case, caution and pause was probably a good thing.
Right. And I was listening, Tom, to your initial comments. I was listening to, we did a full Hirschina's in global planning at CINT 2 weeks ago, and I brought a few of speakers, and two of them mentioned things that you mentioned in the first comment here, is that first, the Dr. Kiram, she's the winner of Entrepreneur of the Year from Ernst Young, EY. And she mentioned compassionate capitalism.
Ah, yes.
Right. This is another thing. And there was another person that I interviewed, also a woman, Sandra. She lived 15 years in a boat with a husband and 2 kids, and in a very, very strong tempestade, what looks like
storm.
storm in the way to New Zealand. They got cut in a big storm for like 5 days. And her phrase was, and I think it relates to what we're living now, you gotta know why you were here when you were in the middle of the storm, facing for 5 days with a little boat. You know, it's a big boat, but it's a little bit in that huge, you know, sea. I think leaders and companies and ourselves, to your point, Tom, we got to understand why we're doing those things that we're doing, right? So
you're right. That's so important, Bob, because bureaucracy is all about structure and process, whereas adhocracy is more about purpose and partnership. Right.
I was hearing to Joe's story about Corona, and I've been following him for a while, and I saw everything that he did, but I didn't know how powerful this thing became to him. You know, he's here in this side for me, but it might be in a different place for you guys. But
you mean CoronaTV?
Yeah, CoronaTV.
Yeah,
like,
I mean it's
powerful it is. How big of a transformation and opportunity it became to you, right?
Yeah,
it's been incredible, and as I've said, Bob, you know, it's first of all, just in terms of you know, just in terms of purpose, you know, and partnership, right? I mean, Tom was a guest who's now part of the furniture. Joey and I've known each other in the industry for over a decade, and he's part of the furniture and part of the family as well. You know, my mother is watching every day. My mother-in-law watches every day and may or may not be on our Zoom after show right now. And, you know, but my mom actually said to me today, we have a standing call at 12:30, and she said, you know, like, I'm not really sure I would have been able to articulate as clearly as I would have liked what you did for a living, or like your work. And now I get to see you every day and in action, but also the connectedness that she has, you know, to me, you know, and the ability, you know, for her to just sit back. And it just shows you, like, we so interesting. I mean, I'm deflecting a little bit of what you're saying, but not intentionally, because you spoke about this idea of listening, you know, which I just thought I'm right. You said when you talk, you listen to yourself, and this idea of listening aloud publicly, and going back to this idea of story listening and listening a question as I wrote it, or forensic listening. There's something like really kind of like cool going on. And I think to myself that my mom sits back and she watches the show, but there's nothing passive about it. It's very active in terms of a connection and a relationship. And so for me, you know, for me, Bob, I'll tell you one thing, just going back to the, who knows what will happen and how it will monetize and blah, blah, blah. But the one thing I think about to myself, you know, like, and I'm sure like you guys would, you know, Joey and the other Bob who's decloaked, and Tom, I think to myself, you know, I didn't even celebrate the 100th interview, mainly because I didn't even know who it was. I was just head down, focused on execution, right? But I think to myself, can you imagine if this was March, whatever the date was, 15th right now? How far ahead I am of that right now, you know, in September, how unbelievably far ahead I am. And I think to myself, those 6 months, because it's 6 months essentially, how much I've learned, and whatever I've achieved or haven't achieved or still have to achieve, I'm still far ahead of where I would have been had I been sitting, you know, on my rear end thinking, what the hell am I going to do right now?
Yeah.
And that also talks to whether you get in the VW bus or whether you go to the island you've always wanted to, whether you write the book, the novel that you always wanted to, in your case, your book on curiosity. There's something to be said about just being all in, Bob. That I guess is the circuitous, you know, response to you, which is, this has been my life for 6 months. So how can I not be anything but all in?
Yeah. One of Aristotle's greatest hits was the insight we learned by doing. And when you hear it, it's just the simplest thing in the world. But too many people postpone the doing, hoping to learn first. And they don't realize, no, they've got to just jump in. They've just got to jump in.
When I got Joe's Google Doc, yesterday, I think he sent me last week, but I didn't see it. But yesterday I saw it. And I said, wow, this is serious. This became something serious.
Yeah. Dude, 272 pages bound. I mean,
you got to hold it up.
Yeah, right.
But you know what? Necessity is the mother of invention. The reason why I started the Google Doc is because somebody told me, I forget who it was. It might have been one of you guys. Hey, why don't you just put this on a Google Doc? And the reason why was what was happening is with all the links, my emails were going straight through to spam. And so what was happening was I was like, I didn't know if it was StreamYard or if it was because it said, here's your Google link and here's your Facebook link and here's your YouTube. So it just shows you that it wasn't even as much of serious or not. It was just like, I need a better solution because most of my guests were saying, I never got your email. And then I would be sitting at like 156 going, where the hell are they? Yeah. And so just by typing the 272 pages out once, now all I have to do is, and
you have a beautiful archive of everything, right?
Yeah. I mean, and it's, if I have one regret, and it's not a regret per se, it's just that I wish I could be listening to the show that I'm actually participating. I wish I could separate myself and had the time to go back then and rewatch the show and maybe listen to it like Tom would listen to it, because Tom listens to it very differently to how I listen to it, because I'm, I can do the talking publicly, but it's very different.
Yeah. See, I talk more during the show than I do during the after show, but of course there's no microphone for you guys to hear me. I said, boy, that's a great idea. Let me write that down. But you have to make sense.
Oh, we can hear you. We can hear you, by the way.
But no, the very fact that you're able to listen and to take notes and to check the chat function as well, I am astonished at the juggling that goes on, because all the experts tell us, of course, that you're not simultaneously multitasking, but you're toggling back and forth in a way that's seamless. And I don't know many people who could do this at all. So yeah, we're all beneficiaries of that.
Sorry, what was that?
It's like
what was that again, Tom?
No.
What was Tom saying something?
What was that?
No, but I'll tell you one of the key ways that I've been able to at least achieve some of this is not to have questions.
Oh.
But I mean, that is a skill in of itself, which is the ability to take I'm actually fearful of the first show that's going to be like 41 minutes, because all these shows are going up until 3 every day. Yeah. And I think to myself, that's 50 minutes of talking with my guest.
Yeah.
Every single day.
What would you take out of the show to shorten it?
Right.
There's no part of it that I
wouldn't.
Really...
But if I had 15 questions, it would be like, all right, enough. And Bob, just my guest today, right? Bob, question number 3, question number 4, we're running out of time. So rather let the conversation go where it goes. And I mean, we ended up having this whole conversation at the beginning about leadership. That wasn't one of the things, right, Bob, that we were going to discuss. But it seems so interesting, and also today, not making it political, but actually thinking about this idea of like the question I asked, right, which is it possible that social media has made it harder to essentially be a leader, because everyone has an opinion and a faction, and the more polarized you are as a leader, the more polarized the people are. And, Bob disagreed. And so that was an interesting conversation that I didn't anticipate.
It was.
Hey, Bob.
What was that?
Oh, I was just going to ask about, Bob, you mentioned in your chat that men, and I'm paraphrasing you, but need to become more female in their leadership, need to become a little more empathetic, a little more concerned with the journey, not just the destination, that kind of thing. And we're having a lot of these conversations over here in America, specifically about what leadership means, not only historically, but what does it mean in a time of COVID, when people are much more fragile and exposed and raw. How do you see that happening in the companies you're part of or overseeing or investing in? Do you see that leadership making a transformation that way in Brazil?
Yeah, I do see. I think there's a generation, to Joey's point, like the AB and BAV leaders, that are older guys, that they will not change. They will end their, entrepreneurial journey in the old style.
Mm-hmm.
But I see a lot of people from around their 40s, making a big shift, understanding that they will not get there, being successful or whatever, rich or whatever it is, with the old style. And on the younger generation, like entrepreneurs and even in big corporations, but younger people, they're coming already with a different mindset. They're coming with a much more interested in purpose, in meaning. The question that Sandra made, during the storm, what am I doing here? They are doing a lot more, right? So, and I think it in general, and again, when we look at what's going on in the world, it's not only Brazil, but politically talking, maybe that's an aspect of exactly that. The more radical people had to get more radical.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was.
They are in power for a while, but probably we're going to more balance. I think, and COVID, I think, will help a bit.
I think it was Murray Nossel who basically said, I think it was him. He spoke about the difference between response versus react. And he said, what we have to do is, instead of what happened, and he, used 9/11 and weapons of mass destruction and attacking, Iraq. He said, what we should have done is just ask the question, like, what happened? Like, why did it happen? Why did they attack us? Not who and what we were going to do about it, that immediate response, but actually being able to ask that question, why were we attacked? And understand it first, and then respond. It's separating react and respond. That shouldn't be the same thing, right? I just thought it was very interesting, this idea of asking what happened. Like, we need to, that's the ultimate introspection, right, Bob? Which is to like take a moment, take a step, take a pause, and actually reflect and say, what is happening and why is it happening? And if we truly understand that, then we can figure out what to do or what we can do. And in the case of what happened with 9/11, I mean, obviously it has transpired that there were no weapons of mass destruction according to what we were told. But ultimately, that was the old style of leadership. It was the leadership that clearly was just about show strength versus show strength in a traditional sort of way, as opposed to a different kind of maybe inner strength.
And your insight here is that for a leader to be responsive rather than reactive, they must be, first of all, reflective. They must ask questions. Every world religion, every great wisdom tradition has a threefold structure: where we are now, where we want to be, and how to get there. Where we are now, where we want to be, and how we get there. You have to understand where you are now in order to be able to get where you need to be or want to be. And so, Joseph, that's a deep insight. To go from being reactive to being responsive, you have to learn to be reflective. And that's one thing our leadership was not. Speed and command and control. We had the world unified around us for a very short time, and we squandered that global community of support that could have been a wonderful thing that could have moved into the future. And so that's a powerful insight for the corporate world as well.
Well, it's yours, because it's your great build on reflective. But I want to just make a point about that and then add something else. The point about that was it was an opportunity to unite the country and the world. longer term. Short term, everyone was united. And in fact, it was false unity, because what happened is everybody just said, yeah, let's go get them, right? Yeah. Everybody, like, because no one wanted to be unpopular by saying, wait a second, shouldn't we just reflect a little bit? Reflect, that was not on the table, the ability to be reflective, because that would have been wildly unpopular and weak. But what I say sometimes to marketers is I actually talk to them about proacting as opposed to reacting, right? So that's the thought, proactive reacting. But the other spin on that, Tom, is this idea of, I want you to be reactive, as in I want you to react, have a feeling, care. Like, you know, if I come up to you and I punch you through the face, don't just stand there stoically and unmoved, you know, but react, have a feeling. And it's the lack of emotions and feeling, it's the apathy, it's the indifference, it's the stoicness that that is the opposite of what we really need, right? Which is the ultimate empathy and humanity. And a word that you actually brought up today was communitarian. Is that a real word, or is that a Tom word?
That's a real word. I love it. Communitarian. Yeah. So
is communitarian like basically community-driven humanity?
Yeah, it's rooted in Aristotle's understanding that we are essentially social beings. We are essential political beings. The Greek word polis for the city. Aristotle believed that people in partnership for a shared purpose is the ultimate formula for human good, the highest human good. People, plural, in partnership, a certain sort of relationship for a shared purpose. And that's why what he says in the politics is relevant not just to political matters, governmental matters, but is relevant to he defines a city as people in partnership for a shared purpose, and so is a company, so is a family, so is any organization of human beings, and so that gives you a communitarian focus at your essence, at your core. That if you start there, you're less likely to ever leave there or forget that starting point. So yeah, deep stuff and fascinating stuff. I wrote a book, one of my books published in Brazil is the book If Aristotle Ran General Motors. And there's a chapter on business and the meaning of life, as well as a lot of stuff about what I'm now called communitarianism or collaboration or partnership. And so it generated some of the conversations I've had with Brazilians years ago that were so fulfilling and that you've reignited, Bob, by being on the TV today. I wish you and I could adopt each other as brothers. I mean, you're obviously such a good guy, as well as being really smart business person. You're just a good person too. And that's more of the combination we need to see in the world today.
That is for sure. That was my first impression of him when we met all the way back when. Yeah. All right, so listen, it's time to wind down. But before I do that, I have to give Bob homework, which is he's now mentioned at least 2 people that were at his conference last week. My first question is, why didn't you ask me to come? The second question, that's my own insecurity, but I would love if you are open to it, to make a couple of introductions and have your curated recommendation. For me, it's like Tom's, like in terms of previous guests. I would love to have them on the show. That's number 1. Number 2 is I will give you the admin now as I say goodbye to people on